Welcome back, listeners, to the Goddess Garden Book Chat. I'm so glad that you're here as always. I love talking about these books, and I love that you're here to listen. And again, I said I wasn't really going to do any book reviews in January, but you know how it is. There's so many books. I looked at my account today before I started this video. I have 2 more Audible credits that I've got to spend. So see, it's a vicious cycle that I'm caught up in. But today, we're here for the Haunted Forest Tour. This is a novel by Jeff Strand and James A. Moore, and it's narrated by Hempel. Joe Hempel. I believe I'm saying it right. If I'm not, please excuse me. No shade. So sorry. Let's do our deep dive, and then I'll be back on the other side, and we're going to talk about this book. I have some interesting things to share, so stay tuned.
All right, deep divers, are you ready for this one?
I think so. Let's dive in.
This week we're taking a look at The Haunted Forest Tour
Ooh, spooky.
by Jeff Strand and James A. Moore. I'm telling you,
Okay.
this book had me flipping pages so fast, I almost got paper cuts.
Wow, it was that good.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not even sure if it was because it was genuinely scary or because I couldn't believe what I was reading half the time.
So bad it's good.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so the basic premise is this. We've got Haley's Hollow, your
Right.
typical small-town America, you know.
I gotcha.
And on the edge of town, a forest that everyone pretty much knows to stay away from.
Right, the local spooky spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then someone gets the bright idea to turn this creepy forest into a tourist attraction.
Oh, no, that's never a good idea.
You'd think, right. But that's exactly what they do.
And of course, things go wrong.
Oh, things go very wrong. Like, did no one in this town watch a single horror movie before they went and did this?
Seriously, what were they thinking?
I know, right? So, as the tours get going, and more tourists are flocking to this forest,
Wow, the forest is not happy about it.
not happy at all, it starts fighting back.
Yeah.
And that's where things really start to get wild.
Okay, but fighting back, how? Like, are we talking trees coming to life?
We'll get into all that, but let me tell you, Strand and Moore do not hold back on the creepy factor.
That's what we like to hear.
There are some scenes in this book that even had me, a seasoned horror veteran, a little freaked out. But there's also this layer of humor
Oh, I like that.
woven throughout that makes it such a fun read.
Okay, so it's like a scary, funny, what were they thinking kind of book.
You got it. Now, one thing I kept thinking as I was reading, and this might be a bit of a spoiler,
Yeah.
but like, what about the people who actually live in Haley's Hollow?
Yeah, good point. How do they feel about all this?
Exactly. They live right next to this forest that's now basically a supernatural battleground.
Yeah.
How are they coping?
The book doesn't really dive into that.
Not really. We get glimpses of some of the townspeople, like Mayor McMillan, who's weirdly excited about the whole thing.
Every town's got one of those.
And then you have Sheriff Brody, who is completely out of his depth. But as far as the rest of the town, their thoughts, their feelings, their fears, we don't really get that.
Huh. That is kind of a missed opportunity. I'd be curious to know how the locals deal with all the craziness.
Right. You have this whole town living next to a forest that's basically gone rogue, and we don't really know how they're processing any of it.
I feel like that could be a whole other book.
Absolutely. And speaking of the locals, let's talk about the staff running this whole haunted forest tour.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, they are a piece of work.
Oh, this is where the what were they thinking part comes in?
Oh, yeah. Buckle up.
So, like, what kind of training did they have?
Training.
Yeah, for the staff. I mean, it's a haunted forest. You'd think they'd need some, I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about like safety protocols and
Yeah,
stuff?
like what happens if something goes wrong? What's the emergency plan?
Well, that's the thing. There doesn't seem to be one.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, it's like they just threw these poor, unsuspecting employees into the deep end and said,
Good luck.
figure it out. We get introduced to a couple of the tour guides, like Dale.
Okay, and what's Dale like?
Dale is, well, let's just say he seems more interested in flirting with the tourists than actually, keeping them safe.
Oh, no, that's not good.
Then there's Bob.
Uh,
Poor Bob.
yeah.
He clearly regrets ever applying for this job.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, as far as any real safety procedures, emergency plans,
Yep.
it's like they just hope for the best.
Which, in a haunted forest that's fighting back against being commercialized, seems like a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. It's almost comical how unprepared they are. But
Right.
then again, maybe that's part of the horror.
How so?
Well, it's that realization that sometimes, even when faced with the unknown, the scariest thing can be human stupidity.
Okay, I see what you mean. That's a pretty chilling thought.
Right. Like we're all so focused on the monsters in the dark, we forget that sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
True, true. But okay, even with all that, all the, plot holes and the questionable decisions and all that, you said you enjoyed the book.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong, the book has its flaws, but Strand and Moore know how to write a creepy scene.
They do.
The way they describe the forest, it's like you can practically feel it closing in on you.
Ooh, I like that.
It's atmospheric, it's suspenseful, it's just plain eerie. And the way they build up the tension, it's masterful. You're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to jump out at you.
So they're good at keeping you on the edge of your seat.
Oh, yeah. And they don't shy away from the gore either. Some of the scenes are pretty graphic, but they describe it with this dark humor that's kind of hard to resist.
I can see that.
It's like they found this perfect balance between terrifying and ridiculous, and they just run with it.
That's quite a combination.
Speaking of ridiculous, we have to talk about the characters.
Oh, yeah, the staff.
Well, them too. But even the tourists. I mean, you have these people willingly signing up for a tour of a haunted forest. Like, what did they think was going to happen?
Maybe they just wanted a good scare.
Maybe. But some of them are just clueless. Then you have the locals, some of whom are just trying to make a quick buck off the whole thing.
The entrepreneurial spirit at its finest.
Right. And then there are characters like Brenda.
Brenda.
She's this park ranger who's more concerned with her bird watching hobby than the fact that people are disappearing in the forest.
Oh, Brenda! Priorities.
Seriously. I'm like, Brenda, there are more important things happening right now than that rare woodpecker.
I love that.
It's just that contrast,
Yeah.
right? You have these characters worried about their everyday lives
Yeah.
while all this crazy stuff is going down around them. And it just adds this layer of dark humor to the whole thing.
It's like they're oblivious to the real danger.
Totally. And I got to say, the audiobook is fantastic. Joe Hempel does the narration,
Okay.
and he just nails it.
Really brings it to life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He gives each character their own distinct voice. You can hear the fear in their voices, the confusion, even the panic.
I can imagine.
Honestly, I'd give him an award for his performance. But yeah, overall, the Haunted Forest Tour, it's a wild ride. It's creepy. It's funny. And it definitely kept me entertained.
Sounds like a good time.
It is. Now, it's not perfect, like we've been saying. It definitely has its flaws, and it leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions, like what happens to Haley's Hollow after all this?
Mhm.
Do they shut down the Haunted Forest Tour? Or do they just keep sending people into this clearly dangerous forest?
Right. And what about the forest itself? Does it, calm down eventually, or does it just keep getting worse?
Does it, spread?
Exactly. Like, does it stay contained to the forest, or does it start affecting the town, too?
Strand and Moore don't really give us any answers. It's almost like they're leaving it up to us to decide.
Which I kind of like. It lets you keep thinking about the story even after you're done reading. It's like that unsettling feeling you get after a good horror movie, you know?
Totally. The movie's over, but you're still looking over your shoulder, waiting for something to jump out.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what if there are places like that in real life?
Oh, I'm sure there are places where it's just better to not go poking around.
Right. Maybe some mysteries are best left unsolved, some doors are better left unopened.
Agreed. But, okay, enough existential dread for one day. So, to sum it all up,
The Haunted Forest Tour.
a wild, spooky, often hilarious ride.
It's definitely not perfect, but it's entertaining. A real page-turner.
It's like a reminder that sometimes the scariest things aren't the monsters, but our own choices. You know, the risks we take, the things we don't think through.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the best way to survive a haunted forest is to just stay out of it completely.
Words to live by.
Well, that's about it for our deep dive into the Haunted Forest Tour.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Until next time, deep divers.
Ah.
Sleep tight and don't let the forest bite.
Okay, let's get into how I was impacted by this book. If I had to give it a title, I would call this one of my favorite, weirdly not good books. I have two. I love what the story is about. The Haunted Forest Tour, at its core, is a very terrifying story. And what, because I'm going to give a couple of spoilers here, don't be surprised. We're reviewing the book. Um, I'm what I was surprised about is how they gloss over how the forest comes into existence, because it happens in your reading. This was a thriving, beautiful town, nice people, good, solid folk, as they would say. And then all of a sudden, right around them, this forest. kicks up out of nowhere. And it becomes this dark, disgusting, creepy thing. So, of course, it gets commercialized. So, fast forward to a thriving, deeply, darkly rich environment. They are able to lay tracks because they're going to run trams for tourists who want to go on a tour to see how creepy it gets inside the forest. But they run into problems with just the crew who are trying to put this whole experience together for visitors. So they get this in place. They have these two trams that are going to launch and take people on these tours. And it's this is how it's described. You sit back, you enjoy a smooth ride and air conditioned comfort as a heavily armored tram takes you through nature's most astonishing creation. And here's the thing, yes, that's how it's designed, but untested, what does that even mean? And man, they don't get far before they get tested. And you're dealing with whole families or individuals, and you deal with every type of personality, just like you would in any tourist situation. You're thrust into an environment that's filled with strangers, and you all have to either think together or watch each one go through the trials and tribulations of whatever space you're inhabiting. In this particular space, you go from this air conditioned comfort into trying to get back to safety. Because here's the thing, the staff that has sent you on this wonderful journey is not coming to get you. They're not coming into that forest, let alone coming into the forest unprotected. But they've sent you in there, and now that you're in there and you're in this situation, you've got to get out. It seems like a similar story in a lot of ways. You get thrust into this dark, evil entity space with all these people, one by one, they get picked off, and only the handful survive, type of thing. But this is more than that. This is you as a voyeur understanding that everything that could possibly go wrong already happened before they got on that tram. And I think that's what really keeps me tied to enjoying this story. It's in my library. I purchased it a while ago. I've enjoyed it once, and then I went back and shared it with my husband because I wanted us to listen to this together, because it was far and away a good it was a good time, because going on this tour and the things that they encounter are otherworldly. Not even I can't even describe to you some of the creepy things that they come across. So the the experience you have when things go wrong is that you start thinking about all those things that are waiting to encounter with all of those wonderful, delicious little tourists. And so you feel a fear that I don't often feel in books. Very few books have made me feel a fear for fictional characters. This one did that. Now, no shade. This is not answering a lot of questions. This is not a book that takes a hard look at a complete story. This is the story about what happens when you make bad choices and go on a Halloween tour to a dark entity. Oops. Oh, well, this is that story. And I told you, at the end of the day, that's how I particularly enjoy a book. I don't, until lately, get into the weeds of how this story was crafted, how well these characters are developed, in the environment and the world building and the if you scare me on a scary book, you've pretty much got me, hence Goosebumps, where he hit. It's nothing deep there, but man, if you can make me look over my shoulder when I drift off to sleep, now we're talking. And I think that's what you're going to get if you ever decide to look for a little bit of terror in your reading. And from the beginning up until close to the end, that sense does not go away. I kid you not. Even thinking about rereading this book makes me feel some kind of way. So even in Halloween, when I was thinking about looking at stories that I wanted to talk about, and I was like, I'd rather read Nosferatu than this. So this book has sort of a factor, because it really does kind of go there when it comes to what's happening. So hopefully you've enjoyed this deep dive and my personal perspective about this wonderful read, The Haunted Forest Tour. I enjoyed it. This is the only collaboration that I found with these two authors, and I haven't read anything by them as individual authors of books. But this was a good time. As I said, as the deep dive said, you will enjoy it. Trust me. Don't overthink it. It's like a bad TV show with the best actors you could find. Don't overthink it. Just buckle up and enjoy it. Until our next read, I'm so glad that you're here. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring a bell for notifications. I'm so glad that you're here and that we get to talk about some of these amazing books. And yes, my whole profile is almost predominantly audio books, library books. Some of them are library books, but mostly on my Audible library. Hopefully, you can find some value in diving into a good listen because the sound effects that come with some of these audiobooks is impressive. So I'll see you later, friends. Until our next deep dive in personal perspective,